Good morning. This is Elise Buie with the Maximum Mom podcast. And today I am here with Jennifer Hargrave. She is a family law attorney in Texas, has her own family law firm, also has a family of her own. And I cannot wait to dive into today. Jennifer, welcome. I'm so glad you joined me today.
Thank you so much for having me, Elise. It's always a great time to have a conversation with you.
Oh, yeah, I love it. I love our ability to connect. I mean, I have to just put out there, Jennifer and I did not know each other personally until recently. We met in Seattle, actually at a restaurant. We enjoyed dinner with Jennifer's husband in her office, like the integrator in her office, as well as my husband. And I literally felt like, Jennifer, I've known you forever.
I felt the same, Elise. It's just, yeah, you're like my spirit animal. I really enjoy our conversations.
I know. It was so, my husband was just like, I can't believe you didn't know each other before today. I was like, I know. I said, but I knew she was my spirit animal. Well, tell us a little bit about who makes you a family. I always like to know, who's in your home.
I love that question. So I am married to Jennifer Hargrave, and together we have 3 children. We have William, who just turned 21, and he's in college in Tennessee. I have Weston, who's a senior in high school, and he just finished his varsity season as a cheerleader. He's the only male cheerleader on the squad, and he's having the time of his life.
Yeah.
And then I have Evelyn, who is 13. She's going to be 14 tomorrow. So we are in the thick of all things fun when it comes to the teenage years. We're juggling all of that. I also have Hippa, who is my 150-pound English Mastiff. And I have Claire, who is the meanest cat in the world. So I would not be a cat person if she'd been my only cat. We love her.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. I'm going to have to learn more about Claire. Who knew you had a mean cat?
Very mean cat.
That's hilarious. Well, I really wanted to talk to you about a few things today, because as you and I have talked, I mean, we are kind of older moms. I think I'm definitely older than you, so I'm going to just put myself in the older category. But, having raised children and gotten them to these, teen years and some beyond, I mean, it is such a different ball game, I think, in parenting when we're talking about parents with, itty bitties or middle school kids. When we're dealing with the teen years, I mean, it is just a whole different ball game, don't you think?
It is such a different ball game. One of the things that struck me as we sort of transitioned out of early childhood, where we'd have our moms groups, we'd all get together and we'd talk about, potty training tactics and who's sleeping through the night and, discipline and all that. And then you kind of move into the teenage years and everybody kind of goes off into their own corners and nobody's coming out and talking about the first time they learned their kid smoked a joint or, all the trouble they're getting into. Those are just things that are hard to share. And I think that's one of the things that makes parenting teens a little bit of a challenge is that, they're it's not easy.
I love that you mentioned that. I mean, I actually 100% agree with you, 150%. And interestingly, when mine were younger, so I had a son, he's now, I don't know exactly how old he is. I'd have to think a minute, but 24, I think. So when he was in high school, he was definitely my son who gave me, absolute run for my money. And so we had a network of moms and we all had these boys. They were all friends, all played football, all giving us, a run for our money.
Yeah.
We literally became this trio of moms who, I mean, we were on the phone Friday night. I mean, literally it was like this thing. I mean, from 10 p.m. Friday night to 2 a.m. when they are getting home or whatever, we're all figuring out well, where are they? Who's driving? Who's this? All this communication. And it was a big joke because one of them, he would get lost all the time. So his mom would call and she'd be like, Elise, where's my son? And I'd be like, hold on, I'll go find out. And Ian would always know where he was. And it was this just total joke. But I mean, without that that support network, there's no way I would have made it through those high school years. No way.
Well, you're
I
so
mean,
blessed because,
oh,
you know,
yes.
I mean, I definitely I mean, I still have friends and had friends during that period of time, but you know, maybe it's just the environment that we're in, or also it varies per kid. Like I don't have the same connections with other parents I do with all three of the
Totally.
kids. And that communication could be really challenging. And I just remember I got a phone call, literally, like the smoke a joint thing was a real thing. And I was driving home and a mom called me and she said, Jennifer, there were a group of us and we were all talking about your son, and somebody mentioned this. I just thought somebody needs to call Jennifer. I'm like, well, thank you. Yeah, somebody needs to call Jennifer. Because you know what? I will tell you, I'm a mom who wants to know. If you catch my kid doing stupid stuff, like
Right.
tell me, let me know,
Totally.
and I want to know, but I feel like these days you just don't know. Some parents can be so
Right.
defensive of their kids.
Totally.
And I just, I think a little humility, a little curiosity, a little like what, I want to know what's going on. I can't be reading all of their messages all the
No, of
time.
course not.
So if you're scrolling through some messages and you see something concerning, please call me. So there's my
Absolutely.
ploy.
Yeah, I mean, but it is really valid. And I think the idea too, I really am concerned about the idea that parents feel like they have to put on this air of having it all together. Like somehow their kids aren't doing stupid things. I mean, literally, I could write, I mean, an Encyclopedia Britannica on my kids' stupid antics, like hardcore,
Yeah.
voluminous, with details, pictures, speeding tickets, interactions with police, hospitals. I mean,
The
all the
works.
things. Yeah,
Yeah. And
all
it
the things.
and really these are things that can connect us when we're willing to share that part of our lives, when we're willing to get vulnerable. And these days mental health is such a huge issue, and so many of these kids are dealing with depression
Yep.
and all the pressures. And it is a different time. I mean, there are certainly things that are
Yeah.
similar to when you and I were teenagers, but there are different pressures on them these days.
Oh,
And I
absolutely.
just I love the kids who are in my life. I love other people's kids. And we want to be able to share and communicate and have conversations that help support them as they navigate this period of time.
Absolutely. Well, and I think it's something we have to really think about too as parents. And you, luckily, you still have some young kids at home. And how do you develop those networks with other parents, as they do come into high school? Because it is different. I mean, the whole world is different now where, I mean, you're not even interacting as much. I mean, you might be, you're in Texas, we're in Washington. Like, it's different.
Right.
No
What
doubt.
pandemic? There's no pandemic here.
I know. It just moved here, obviously. We're just having the pandemic for the country. But it is really different. And just the whole idea of not being around, not being in play groups when they're young. I mean, it makes such a difference to be able to develop that rapport, though, so people know. And I think that was so key, at least in our group. I mean, there was no pretense about anything. We all knew what these boys were doing. We all knew what they were all capable of. You know what I mean? Like we were pretty, I mean, we found it kind of humorous. I mean,
Mhm.
like, they were going to do what they were going to do, whether we were clued in and friendly with each other or not. So we kind of
Exactly.
decided, this is a really good thing for us to be so connected and to know. And I mean, it made a world of difference. And it also opened up that line of communication with the kids. I mean, it was a
Yeah.
pretty big joke. I mean, they would call me and be like, okay, what did Ian tell you about whatever? Because he was very open about things. Like
You had the talker. I didn't have the talker. I mean,
yes,
I still like now my kids. I have good interrogation skills. I'll
right,
get them to talk, but they don't voluntarily share information, and so
right.
it's hard when you're like the only one who doesn't know.
Yeah, well, you got to find the talker. Find the
Yeah,
talker in the group and hook up with their mom. That is your
yeah,
best bet for sure.
exactly.
That's so
Yes.
funny. Well, I wanted to talk to you also about, I mean, when we think of parenting, and I know you have experienced the same thing as you parent your children as they get older, when they're not quite as cute and adoring and unconditionally loving, like when they get older and they tend to really point out, some of our real problems and flaws or, shortcomings. How have you dealt with that?
Where do you want me to start? I don't know. I tell you what, I've got a whole lot of judgment in my house right now. Yeah, it's challenging. Look, I love these kids. I know, I know I had it too in my relationship with my mom. I remember looking at my mom and just thinking, oh my God, like who would want to hang out with you, right? And so that's just coming back to me. It's okay, it's cool. And I was telling you, the teenage years are just not good for the self-esteem. But fortunately, I have other things in my life that do fill me up. And so, knowing that turning to my children for self-esteem is not a good strategy anyway to begin with. I like to have a really good sense of humor about this and really to look at it with a lot of curiosity. And sometimes they're pointing out things that, I have an opportunity to reflect on. I wasn't even aware that I carried around this judgment that I didn't know I had, and they've just reflected back to me that I'm super judgy about everything. And okay, maybe I kind of am, and I need to peel that back and look at it. And it is an opportunity for growth. Parenting teenage years is probably, if you look at it as an opportunity, it's probably one of the best opportunities you'll ever have to really do some personal introspection.
Absolutely.
And growth. And that's with a good sense of humor and just looking for those moments of connection with my kid. That's the most valuable thing in the midst of all the hubbub and noise and the frustration, because I just did another weekend of like 10 loads of freaking laundry and half of it was clean. And I know that because some of the stuff I was pulling out still had tags on it. Like, why is this in the laundry? Because you're just throwing everything in the laundry. And I know there are other ways to deal with that. I've listened to some of your podcasts. I just didn't implement it well. And so I had a weekend of overload. But, when we can kind of quiet all that noise and really get to the core of who they are and what's going on, and nurturing that connection, that will, hopefully build that relationship into the future on the other side of this. And that's my hope and my vision.
Well, I think it's the only one, and it makes all the sense in the world, and it does work. Speaking from somebody who has now several kids on that other side, like post 25, where they're actually regular humans with, they're fun to be around. They're nice. They, say nice things to me, like every time I talk to them. And I'm like, whoa, who are you? It's a really different world. And I think you make such a great point about the connection. It's all we really have, like we can try to help guide them in all the different ways we try, like with schoolwork and extracurricular and being nice people and finding their passion in the world and, cleaning up after themselves and all those things. But some of it takes and some of it doesn't take, And
the bend that has to happen is when they're little. You are responsible for everything, and everything they do reflects on you, right? So of course, like all the cute little outfits around the holidays and just like the pressure to kind of manage all of that. But you realize as they turn the corner through adolescence and into teen years is that they are hardwired to be their own expression. And it is going to be different. That's what this whole period of time is about, is like, moving away from you and coming up with their own and exploring their own, and to respect that process and not feel threatened by it. Right. There are lots of conversations we have where I was raised with, a lot of, the idea was that this is how we believe as a family. And if you varied from that, I didn't get that from my dad. I got it more from my mom. But if you varied from that, like, there was shame associated with those other beliefs. And so to really not bring that into my parenting, to be able to let go of that and know it's okay. They get to
Yep.
try on different hats. They get to try to be different people and explore different things. And I've poured into them everything I can pour into them, and still continue to do, but it just doesn't soak in anymore. But
Right.
just trust that they're gonna, they get to figure this stuff out and figure out who they're gonna be and what their own
Absolutely.
expression in the world is gonna be. And there's nothing better to really see them, than to watch them kind of blossom into that.
Oh,
It's
I
just a
think it's
process.
so powerful. I mean, I have found it, with all our different children. I mean, just so powerful. And when they're able to really put put their voice to it has been, I mean, I had a son when he was a freshman just literally tell me like, mom, I know you think like, we all are going to do certain things like go to good schools, go to college, go to graduate school. He's like, I don't know that I'm really into that. He was like, I'm going to just be the best lineman in the state of Washington. And then I don't know exactly what I'm going to do. And I was like, oh, okay. But I mean, here's this 14-year-old kid like telling me like what he perceived to be my vision was not his vision. And I was just like, well, good on you, because I mean, doing something for me is surely not going to be helpful for you later on. Like,
So I had to get there, Elise, because I mean, both of my boys, and I'm preparing for my daughter to go through this too. I don't know if it's a boy thing or just a girl thing, but obviously we value education, got a law degree. And so like my vision is you all go on to college and that's it. And with both my boys, they both came and said like, I don't think it's for me. Um, and the first one, when he went through that, I had such a triggered reaction. Like I was so angry.
mm,
Well, I got news. If
interesting.
you're parenting a teenager, your anger isn't going to change their mind. If anything, it's going to like push them in the other direction, right?
For sure.
So, I mean, I really had to self check in. That was my opportunity for growth and realize,
Yep.
okay, that's exactly right. It's my life plan. And I get to live my life. I'm living my dream life. Like
Right.
y'all get to go live your dream lives. And
100%.
that
Oh,
oldest
yeah.
one didn't end up going to college. So because he is such a college guy, like it just drove me crazy the idea of him not. But my middle son, I mean, he's very different, and I get it. Like there are lots of opportunities available. Not everybody has to go to college, and I really had to learn that and get okay with that. And it's totally okay.
Oh, yeah, completely. Oh, yeah, it is. I think that's great, though, that you were able to step back and really see kind of your anger for what it was as, that really isn't on him. You know what I mean? Like they
No,
can
it's
decide,
mine.
yeah. And I mean, to be fair, like we do have I mean, we expect our kids to either be in school post high school or they're supporting themselves. Like we don't support anybody
Agreed.
post high school unless they're in college. But if they're not in college, they totally can get a job and do whatever they want to do. I mean, and that's fine. But don't think you're living on my sofa, because that's not going to happen.
Exactly. No, no, no. I'm with you 110% on that. Yeah. That's
Yeah. And that's hard in and of itself. I find just to put down some of those boundaries around what am I going to be okay with when they are adults? Because you made a comment earlier, and I wanted to say something to you. You mentioned when the kids are little, you're responsible for them. And it's interesting because as they get older, we actually become responsible to them, not for them. And that is such a huge distinction, I think,
I
that
love
parents,
that.
especially moms, really have to make in raising children, is that there is a point in time where your responsibility shifts and it becomes a very different responsibility. And I think part of that responsibility to your children is having solid boundaries and that are reasonable, respectful within your value system or whatever, and communicated so that the children do know like what you are and are not going to be okay with, and that
Exactly.
it's just a boundary, and helping them learn to create their own boundaries.
That's exactly right, right? So that respect goes two ways. And so those
Absolutely.
boundaries are super healthy. I was going to say, I say something similar, which is as a young parent, your job is to protect your children. Like
Yep.
when they're little, you got to make sure they don't run out in the street, you got to make sure they're fed, all of that, right? But our job as they grow is to transition into preparing them. So we're no longer protecting, because I can't. What I realized with my oldest son was that he is the agent in his life. He gets to be the decision maker. And if he wanted to put his life in a ditch, he was fully equipped to do that. And there was nothing I could do to stop it. Didn't mean I wouldn't try. But really, how do we, but I can't protect them. I can't be there all the time. And so how do we prepare them to be the good decision makers, and to take part of that is taking responsibility for their own life, their own actions, and not insulating them.
Completely. I mean, I said something to somebody the other day who has kind of younger children, but she was asking me a direct question about, allowing your child to fail. And I mean, to me, it is critical as a parent, starting when they're young, allowing them to fail, moving out of the way, and not, stepping in for everything that's going to happen, because the stakes are low when they're young.
That's
and
exactly
their
right.
failures are just, it doesn't matter that they got a bad grade in 4th grade or whatever. Like, you don't need to step into that, but teaching them how to both advocate for themselves and teaching them how to do a risk benefit analysis when they're making their decisions, to me is, I mean, the best part of why I was an insurance defense litigator was just learning the risk benefit analysis so thoroughly that, I mean, my children literally as like 4 and 5-year-olds would talk about, well, that seems risky, Mom. And I was like, yeah, I agree with you. That seems too risky. But
I love it.
Helping them learn that. And I mean, once they're teenagers and young adults, I mean, I've watched my children pencil out, parties that they're renting houses and inviting all kinds of kids to, and they are literally doing a risk benefit analysis. And I'm like, yeah, you go do this stupid thing after you've analyzed it.
That's right. And if you need some help on some potential risks associated with that activity, I'm happy to help you brainstorm some ideas on that one. Yeah.
I mean, it's really an important skill, because like you say, these kids are completely equipped to land themselves anywhere. And we have to teach them as best as possible how to make those decisions. And then in my mind, how to deal with the natural consequences on the back end.
Well, and isn't that where resiliency is developed then? Because you live through the consequences of your action. And by the way, you learn that you can survive tough situations. I mean, I get it. I would love that if my children never had to have a heartbreak, but you know what? They are going to have heartbreaks. And we talk about that. I'm like, you know what? You're going to get dumped.
Right.
And it's like it's going to be like the best thing, and I'm going to be cheering for it. But no, but I mean, like every relationship isn't going to work out, but that's the normal part of life. Like,
absolutely
talking through those things so that when the bad stuff happens, like, it's okay. You've got everything you need to like get through this, because bad stuff happens in life.
To everybody all the time. I mean, it's just part of life. Like, I barely even call it bad stuff anymore. Like, it's just the ebb and flow of your life.
Yeah.
And I mean, interestingly, my oldest daughter, she had a flood recently in her apartment. I mean, out of nowhere, somebody broke a sprinkler. Her entire apartment was completely flooded. And she literally reached out as part of the chaos she was dealing with. She's like, who knew Hurricane Katrina was coming in so handy? I knew exactly what to get out of this apartment. And I was just like, well, there you go.
There you go.
You gotta love when resiliency pops its head. And, but she just knew, okay, we take anything that we can't replace. The rest of it, we don't worry about. We focus on the stuff that is irreplaceable. And I just thought, I love this. When something that conceivably and to a lot of people seems horrible for a child to go through, Hurricane Katrina, I mean, she's able to really utilize what she learned in that and see the positive in it. And I thought that was really positive.
Yeah, for sure. There's so much good that comes out of hard stuff. And, you and I are both working with families in the middle of these transitions. And I always tell my clients, this is an opportunity for you to show your children the toolbox of like, when life doesn't go as planned, where do you go? You know, you have a community of support, you have faith, you have whatever those tools are that help you navigate that. You know, your children are going to watch you do this, and they're going to watch you come out on the other side. And you know,
Well,
that's
Jennifer,
life.
it is life. And I have to say, knowing what you've been through over the last few months, losing your mom, I mean, Jennifer's mom was diagnosed, and I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think she passed away within 4 or 5 months of the diagnosis.
Was 4 months from date of diagnosis to date of death, almost to the day.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, talk about somebody whose children have been watching how you deal with something.
Well, fortunately, I had a good teacher with my mom.
Right.
You know, and we talked about that a lot. But yeah, she was vibrant, healthy, still working, hadn't retired because she was doing her life work, which was her great passion and love, and amazing life, and such an amazing resource for me. I mean, I couldn't be the attorney I am today if it
Right.
hadn't been for all of her help through the years. You know, my biggest cheerleader for sure. And yeah, she was diagnosed right after the ice storm in Texas.
Oh,
So we came out of the ice storm. She had a doctor's appointment during the ice storm that got postponed, and learned that she had a mass on her lungs. And, you know, like all of the things, we did all the things. And it was, you know, it was her time. But we didn't really know that until 2 weeks before her death. She had just started a round of chemotherapy, and so we were all still filled with hope and
oh,
optimism that, you know,
right.
this was gonna be it. She had like the A team. If you have to have lung cancer, I mean, the team here at UT Southwestern and Dallas, people fly in all over, and here we had them right in our backyard. So we were just filled with hope, and that she would be cured, and that it became very clear very quickly when she began treatment that she was not. And so she made the decision to go into hospice care, which was amazing. I had
Yeah.
no idea. I had no idea that this hospice place even existed in our community. And then she
Oh,
went there, and it was so beautiful. It was a profound, I say those 12 days with her were just living in love. They were
right.
really beautiful period of time. And I'm so thankful to have had that time with her. When her mom died suddenly, and there were no goodbyes. There were
Right.
no, you know, the closures. And I know you had something similar where it just
Yeah.
happened so fast. So we had time, and it was really a beautiful thing to witness. But it happened so fast, and you know, I'm still living with kind of the surrealness of, is she really gone? Like,
Right.
you know, she was such an integral part of my day-to-day life. So
Well,
yeah.
and what a powerful, I mean, a powerful situation for your children to watch. I mean, I know I got
Mhm.
to just see from afar as you would post some things, and it was just so beautiful. And I mean, I know there are many of us that were like always waiting for your updates about how you were doing and what different things your kids were doing, you know, coming in and doing different things with your mom. And I mean, but so powerful for your children to see both the love between you and your mom, but also how you're handling it. I mean, because talk about a major life event.
Yeah, and it certainly is a major life event from them too, because she was so
Yeah,
bonded with them that they're dealing with their own loss and their own
totally.
grief, you know, and to be present with that. But they were amazing. I mean, how blessed we were to be in the same city with them, that they were
Yeah,
all home, right? They had just all come home. So
right.
Weston, my middle son, had been away at military school for a year, and he just came home, and my son from college was home, and they were phenomenal. The boys were just, you know, just amazing. And then Evelyn and my niece were singing songs in the hospice unit. They were writing songs for her and singing. And we had the nurses would come in and tell us that people were asking if there were angels in the stairwell, because they were practicing their songs in the stairwell. It was a really sweet time. And you know, we got to know other families during that time. It
Right.
was really, you know, there was so much about it that was lovely. And when it all started, I remember, you know, knowing that in the midst of every crisis there's opportunity, and I
Yeah.
can focus on the loss, I can focus on everything bad that's happening, or I can focus on the beauty. And I really was very intentional about, I'm going to focus on the beauty, and it was there.
I love that. And it reminds me so much, like I told you, my mom did die very suddenly. She had a fall and we all thought she'd be fine, no big deal. The doctors all said
Mm.
she's fine. Well, it turns out they had missed like internal bleeding. So, I mean, I get called, I'm at a lacrosse game with one of my kids. I get called and told, your mom is like
Ugh.
absolutely going downhill. She's being put in ICU. And I was, so we rushed back to the hospital and I got there as they're literally wheeling her into the ICU. And she looks out the window and she turns to me. She's like, Elise, do you see all those beautiful flowers? And I was like, I do, Mom. She's like, I love this room. And the doctor literally, when he took me out to tell me that every single one of her organs was failing and that she was going to die like imminently, he said, I have never in all my years had somebody comment about the beauty of the ICU. And he was like, he's like, your mom is very unique. And I was like, she is definitely,
Aw.
she was the most amazing human at being able, kind of like you did so intentionally, to see the beauty and the joy around her. She
Yeah.
never focused on the negative things. And she managed to, see the flowers, and my mom, being the good horticulturist that she was, she proceeded to tell me what I was looking at because I never knew what I was looking at. But I mean, and then, she was gone within 2 hours. And
Wow.
yeah, it was pretty wild. But I mean, I'll never forget that. And like, that might sound silly to somebody who hasn't gone through like a death, having that be kind of like my mom's last gift, to me and my kids, as she's talking to us about the beauty around her in the hospital room. I mean, because my children still find that to be so interesting that, that's what their grandma focused on,
Yeah.
rather than the fact that she was not going to make it.
That is such a beautiful gift. Just that point of reference.
Yeah,
And what a legacy to leave behind for your children too, right? I mean, that's
totally.
something that they talk about and they've seen happen. And yeah, I mean, I think this was really an occasion where I'm so thankful our kids were a part
Absolutely.
of walking through that journey with us. It, I'm still processing it, right?
Oh,
Like
yeah.
I don't know the missing yet. We're heading into the holidays and
Right.
I'm just beginning to know, right? Like
Right.
what will it mean to not have her there for all of that? So then I get teary-eyed. So
Sure.
but
Oh,
it's
well,
grief is
and
just such it's the most normal part of life.
it is. And it's
And
it's its own journey. I mean, and that you have to give yourself so much grace and space and love to go through all the grief, because it's going to come up, I mean, in pretty inopportune moments.
absolutely. It does. And yeah, the one thing that was really interesting, that I've just been really aware of is, you just sort of notice things about the process, was that I lived in fear of losing
Yeah.
my parents my
Mhm.
entire life.
Oh, wow.
And from the time I was little, like not like debilitating fear, but it just was
Sure.
something like, it's going to happen someday and you just
Right.
don't want it to happen. And now that we've gone through it and we're on the other side of that, there's some sense of like, okay, life does go on
Mhm.
in the midst of things. Somebody said to me, oh, it's so traumatic. And I'm like, no, it's not traumatic. It is it's sad, but you're gonna lose your parents someday.
Right.
There are other things in life that are traumatic, I think, like the loss of a child or something,
Right.
horrible that really does um, you know, throw a huge curveball. But this was a curveball in that we didn't know it was coming.
Right.
We didn't have that long to deal with it, but we get through it, and I feel her love and presence every
Yeah.
day. It's just experiencing it in a very different way.
Right. Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that was a real struggle for me, and it really did take me about 2 years to kind of get past this. I used to call my mom every single day when I was driving home or to work. Like, we just talked every single day in some
Yeah.
context. And some of it was like annoying, because sometimes she would call me and be like, I need you to go she had a rule about Raisin Bran. You could buy Raisin Bran, like Kellogg's Raisin Bran, but obviously that didn't have enough raisins. So she wanted special raisins from a different store. So she'd be like, Elise, if you could stop and get my raisin. I'm like, Mom, I've got 4 kids. I'm an attorney. I cannot really stop every day and get you all these things. But, we would do some crazy things to keep my mom happy. But those calls I didn't realize how truly grounding they were to me, like to be able to just check in with her. And like I said, sometimes I was annoyed, but most of the time we would laugh about things and I could tell her, about whatever random antics the kids were doing. And I don't know, she just helped me, get through my day-to-day world. And that was a real void, not having that camaraderie.
And that friendship. Especially I think of it where I'm missing her most right now is like when the kids, the accomplishments or the challenges, right? So, when I've got the eye rolls coming from the teenager, it was really nice to have, the friendship of my mother over here. And so just kind of missing that part of it, but it's okay. We're, my dad's getting a lot of phone calls from me now, so that's fun. It's getting to I'm sending him all the pictures I would have sent my mom. And we're enjoying that relationship with my dad is,
that's awesome.
It's fun.
Yeah, I think it is so important that we can normalize the grief and normalize how messy it can be, because I do think sometimes people try to keep it all buttoned up and all tidy, and it just doesn't always work like that. I think I had a few breakdowns actually in the court. When I would start crying about something and obviously nobody did anything, or you know what I mean? It's just some random thought and tears would start rolling out. And I'm like, oh, come on, Elise, like you have got to get
it always
makes together.
What makes me tear up, and tears are just so freaking messy and they're uncomfortable, and it's like, golly, this is just so annoying. I so don't want to be crying in front of you. But when somebody comes alongside and they're like, how are you? And I'm like, well, I was fine until now that you ask. Let me have that moment. Let me just connect. But it's embarrassing. And it's so human, but I don't know why are those things embarrassing? It is. I would just had it happen this weekend where, I was with a bunch of people. They were, oh, we just miss your mom. I'm like, yeah, thanks, me too. It's okay.
Well, and it really, ideally it wouldn't be embarrassing. You know what I mean? Like ideally we could all just be okay with it, because I do think it just happens. And I have to say, one of the things that became really striking to me was it was obvious once my mom died who was around me who had similarly experienced such a loss.
Right.
Because there's a real difference, I think, when you're around somebody who has kind of had a similar type, really big loss. They do get it in a way. And sometimes, they also understand, like you're talking about, that embarrassment, and they'll try to steer you away from that to try to help, because a lot of times I think people realize just how raw it is. I just didn't realize how raw those emotions sat just barely under the surface. And months and months later, I was like, what is the matter with me?
Yeah, no, they're very much there. The other day I pulled in somewhere parked and I just sat there and cried. And, that freedom of just because that's a commitment I made to myself, is when I do feel it. I allow myself to just feel it, right? We're busy people and I don't have scheduled on my calendar, okay, you're going to feel now. But maybe I should.
I was going to say that's probably a good idea.
Probably a good idea. But the feelings come when they come, and you just lean into them. And there's a sweetness in the grief too. I was afraid of it, and I don't really live in fear of it right now. When that period comes of missing, I just kind of what am I missing? I'm missing how she smelled. I'm missing how she talked, like
Right.
all of that is just right there. And now here I am getting messy.
But it's okay.
But
I
it
mean, and
is.
she was your biggest cheerleader. And talk about a time when you need a cheerleader, when you got the eye rolling teenager.
Right. So, yeah. So anyway, well, we're
Yeah.
doing okay, and you learn to just integrate her presence in all different ways, and I definitely feel her with me every single day. So we always started off the day with Jesus calling. That was a little meditation that she did, and so I'm continuing to do that because I
Good
feel like
for
I meet
you.
my mom there in the mornings, and it's just a
Right.
nice way to start the day. So
That's awesome. Well, I just thought you handled the whole process so beautifully with your family. And I don't know, your grace as a mom, which obviously you got so much of from your own mom, just came out in everything you were doing. And I just found it very powerful. And I think your children are blessed to have that in you.
I will tell them that you said that.
Okay, good. Maybe I should
Thank you.
tell them.
Yeah,
Well,
it was.
Jennifer, it's been so lovely to talk to you today.
It's been wonderful to talk with you, Elise. I'm a big fan of the Maximum Mom podcast. I hope everybody subscribes and follows. I think you're doing an amazing job of really telling, the stories of so many interesting women out there who are, navigating life
Yes,
and all doing the very best that we can.
we are.
It's a great journey, and it's a great
Yeah.
journey to do alongside other committed moms. So thank you for your leadership.
Oh, absolutely. I just love it. I mean, I just think women are badass people. I've met so many fascinating people and the things they're able to accomplish. I mean, it's really staggering to me, actually.
Yeah, it's very impressive. And I
Oh,
feel that every time I listen to your podcast. So a real honor and privilege for me to get to spend time talking with you today.
yeah. Well, I really appreciate it. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And I know you have a lot of celebratory things coming up this weekend, which are great and happy, and then also bittersweet. And so I'm going to be thinking about you and your family.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Okay, you too.
Thanks, Jennifer.